After both Democrats and Republicans attacked Trump throughout the convention, he responded in the completely mature way, he always does. During Vice President Harris's acceptance speech, Trump had a complete meltdown on Truth Social, posting, get ready for this, 59 times. Then dialing into Fox and offering a bizarre and rambling retort to her speech. And just last night in Arizona, telling his truth about the DNC, filled with dis and misinformation.
Barack Hussein Obama. He was nasty to me. He was nasty. Michelle was nasty. They're all nasty. Nasty people. Kamala mentioned my name, I think, 21 times. She didn't mention the border. She didn't mention inflation. She didn't mention anything but my name over and over and over again.
I guess he didn't see the segment where they taught everyone how to pronounce her name. Joining us now, former Virginia Republican Congressman Denver Riggleman. He also served as a senior advisor to the January 6th Select Committee.
Did they not pay for good Wi-Fi at the Trump rally? Why was the picture so grainy? They really, I don't know, maybe some money troubles going off to his legal issues. Congressman, Donald Trump, look at the graininess of it all. I am very struck by the fact that Donald Trump seemed quite disturbed by Vice President Harris's remarks, so much so that he called into Fox News after the fact, and he was beeping the cheek on the phone. I'll let y'all listen to it, and we'll chat on the other side.
She didn't talk about crime. She didn't talk about 70% of our people are living in poverty. She didn't talk about housing, really. The trade deficit. She didn't talk about child trafficking that she's allowed to happen. She's going to give a tax increase of 4 to 5 times what people and companies are paying right now.
When I get really riled up and I'm on the phone, with my husband or my homegirl, and I'm like, and when I don't have my AirPods in, I too, hit the phone with the buttons because I am quite undone. I got the sense that he was undone, Denver.
Well, yeah, and by the way, it's Hawaiian shirts for Harris Day, so I apologize. I just made that up. But I think the initial baseline that you should have when you have a president is somebody who knows how to use the phone. And also, when you're talking about the unhinged things that he was talking about, one of the things that really struck me, if I may be serious, is he was talking about the safety of women. And, I think E. Jean Carroll would differ. I think anybody who sees any pictures of him with Epstein would differ. I think what he said on the Hollywood Access bus, what he said that he could do at any time would differ. So I really was struck by that. I know he says rambling things, and you said, hey, he was disturbed about the DNC. Just generally, Donald Trump is disturbed. I don't think we can say about the DNC. But I think what he said about women, which was absolutely just unironically stupid, you just get to a point that you wonder how anybody who's a Republican or former Republican or anybody that's sane in any way could vote for a person like this.
So on that point, so clearly Donald Trump knows he's got some issues he's got to clean up on, and he doesn't know how, so he'll just lie about them. So he tweeted out last evening 2 tweets which I took particularly notes on. One was, my administration will be great for women and their reproductive rights. And the second one was, the Republican Party is charging forward on many fronts, and I'm very proud that we are, in all caps, a leader on IVF. So
he thinks we're stupid.
He thinks we're stupid. But what he also, I think, realizes that this issue, more than anything else, has cut deeper with American women. And in combination with everything you just said, makes his candidacy toxic for women and toxic for a lot of men. How effective do you think this lie is going to be, where he can just tweet out, hey, yeah, my administration is going to be great for women and Republicans are all in on IVF?
Yeah, I think all they got to do is show commercials of J.D. Vance, right, Michael?
That's
that's it. He's losing. That's what's happening. He's losing. And I think when you saw the energy of the DNC, you also have some policy things that are rolling out that I don't know if he can react to in real time. And my hope is that the vice president and the governor, I hope that they get on the road immediately. And I think if they can hammer home the points about his inveterate lying, the fact that he can't tell the truth, which is something that everybody should know, even the press, I think we're to a point right now that he knows he's losing. He has to try to recapture the message of pro-women after him bragging about destroying Dobbs, everything that he's actually been found liable for as a sexual assailant, everything that he said about women. Again, I think it just goes back to the fact that I do believe that women are the key to this election, and I think they are who are going to carry Kamala Harris and Tim Walz to victory, Michael. I just don't see how anybody with an IQ above, 100, would vote for anybody but Kamala at this point.